Hey guys, this is Anthony over at MMOBomb.com, and today I'll be doing a first look for Dysterra on PC. Just like in previous first look videos, I will guide you guys through the beginning hours and hit all of the major points so you can get a general feel for the in-game features, gameplay, and other areas while talking about the positives and negatives. This way you can decide if this game is worth your time or not from my starting impressions. Developed by Reality MagiQ and published under Kakao Games, Dysterra is a sci-fi based FPS survival game where players cooperate with or compete against each other on the destroyed Earth. As of this review, Dysterra is currently in early access. It started on November 23rd as buy-to-play after a series of beta testing, costing players $30 on Steam. If you're willing to buy it, you can play on public and private PvP and PvE servers that can hold up to 80 players or go solo in Dysterra's single player mode. Before we go deep into this review, I'd like to discuss Dysterra's game concept and explain how players factor into it. Why are players sent to a destroyed Earth, and for what purpose, you might wonder? Well, you have human greed to thank for that. After obsessively mining and relying on an energy source known as terracite, scientists warned everyone that there would be massive repercussions for using them. No one seemed to care until the Earth began to split open, fires spewing from chasms where buildings stood, and natural disasters turning the world upside down. This result led humanity to flee to the stars until they began to run out of terracite, forced to return to the planet to farm these precious energy stones again. That's where you, the player, come into play. You're a prisoner, an outcast of the space colony, and tasked with acquiring terracite to save humanity in space. However, you can go against saving everyone and sabotage efforts to recover terracite. Whichever path you choose is entirely up to you once you hit the ground running though. Something that applies to everyone is the eventual Terrafire phenomenon. This event is a timed mechanic on every server. After a certain amount of days pass in game, the server will basically blow up. So players will need to get what terracite they can and escape the planet before that happens. Overall, Dysterra has a pretty solid concept that couples nicely with its large-scale multiplayer survival aesthetic. When it comes to in-game execution, the game's systems and overall gameplay loop feels very similar to Rust. The rotation of spawning on the sandbox map, looting, crafting, building, and progression doesn't reinvent the wheel as far as survival games go. Although Dysterra does have some neat objectives you can follow, light RPG elements, and status debilitating effects that will make players adapt their approach to certain parts of the zone. These factors are all great additions, but I have issues with Dysterra's current state. Exploring the map feels repetitive and unexciting, official servers are sorely lacking players, and the odd difficulty pacing makes the entire survival process unsatisfying. These negatives hold the game back, which I'll bite into a little bit more throughout this review. Despite those problems, Dysterra has potential, and the game is under a development team who are incredibly active with their player base and who provides changes/ideas almost daily. With all this in mind, let's take a closer look at the starting hours of the game, beginning with character creation. After you've selected a server, the game will send you to the character creation screen. You won't be spending a lot of time styling your character because it is pretty limited. You can mess around with the standard face, hair, and skin adjustments, but you won't be changing clothing, adding accessories, or anything else like that to stand out from the crowd. However, the cool thing about the character creation screen is being able to choose a mechanical arm. It's a cosmetic choice, but this robotic arm helps you with laser beaming resources to gain materials and assists with locating them out in the field. Once finished, you'll fall to the planet from space via a drop pod. At the same time, you'll get a warning for the number of days left on the server. Your first steps on the Dystopian planet will be guided by Vanessa Holden. She is a NPC that will train you on some of the basic stuff you'll be doing in Dysterra. From here, you learn about maintaining your health, hunger, and battery gauges. Health and hunger are pretty self-explanatory. Patch yourself up with bandages and eat a can of beans to stay in top form. Eventually, you'll run into and craft better items that give more benefits. The battery gauge is a bit special in that it allows you to toggle and see what resources you can mine with your bionic arm. And as you might expect, you can recharge it with batteries. Very quickly, you get your first taste of PvE against a few robot enemies while gathering metals, stones, and left behind wires. Using the pistol or assault rifle in your possession will take them down easily. As you progress deeper into the sandbox map, you will encounter higher level enemies with unique quirks and valuable drops. But one thing that stays consistent across all enemies is that the AI can be kinda dumb. Enemies can randomly run in circles, clip into the floor and can't seem to shoot down stairs accurately. While they can be dumb, encountering a swarm of them could be super challenging in a terrible way. Fighting groups upon groups of enemies when there's literally no one nearby to help you, especially if you're on a PvP server by yourself, makes burning through mobs a pretty long process. Add on the fact that it takes so many bullets to put down just one enemy, you can see how it sort of kinda just drags along. Unlike PvE combat, crafting items feels right on the money. You can queue up crafts while doing activities, make valuable equipment, and locate areas with specific resources for items. Dysterra doesn't make crafting hard to understand, which is fantastic in my book. Even better, most of everything you need you can make while exploring or gathering. But you do have a limited inventory space, so that's something you'll have to work with a bit. And as a rule of thumb, it's always best to slot your most treasured inventory items into your quote-unquote safe pockets. If you played the Cycle Frontier or Tarkov, you'll be familiar with this mechanic. Dying out in the field leads you to drop all your items except for those slotted into your safe sections. Though in Dysterra, you can travel back to where you were and pick them up. But other players could also loot your items before you do, so watch out. To help combat this unfortunate scenario, it's always good to build a base of operations where you can secure your hard-earned items. Pressing F2 will pop up a ring of structures that you can use to map out the foundation of your base. You won't be building an impressive piece of architecture with the stone you've collected, but you can make something that is pretty doable, I would say. Now that you have a place to call home, there are some household items you should make. For example, beds act as spawn points when you die on the map, and workbenches allow you to make new rare crafting items. The most important item though is that you should make a building core. It will power and protect your base from evading players aiming to take your resources. Other ways of protecting your home, like setting a passcode on your door, will assist with making everything stay locked up safe. And the reason why all of this is crucial is because when you log out of the game, time still moves on without you. While you're gone doing real world stuff, your home could get raided by players when you're not looking. After a while, you'll get familiar with all these moving parts in Dysterra and settle into the progression loop as you explore the map. Here's where my earlier negatives start to rear their heads. Within a few hours of trekking over the map, gathering resources, creating new equipment to battle stronger mobs, and repeating that process is not all that exciting. Part of that is because of the enemy AI isn't fun to fight, and because the many bases you enter to find the really good materials all feel samey. Dysterra's early game hardly feels engrossing once you understand how everything works. The competitive multiplayer aspect would make things more intense and exciting, but sadly there are not that many players on official servers. In fact, throughout my 8+ hours with this game on the PvP and PvE server, I only came across 2 players out in the wild. Most servers when I was playing averaged around 8 to 15 players, and the majority of them seemed to be higher level characters. For a game that has a concept centered around how players cooperate or work against each other, Dysterra really doesn't have that many players. And because of that, looting a massive amount of materials and hoarding them inside your base feels painless because there's no competition. Without this core element of the game, progression felt incredibly stale. Even if you made a really nice weapon, or it took a while to craft a great chest piece, it never felt super rewarding making them because it was easy to get the mats for them. Of course, as you get further into the game, things will become rarer, but the same principle applies there too. If there are no players to challenge others and the progression loop is based around that, Dysterra sort of falls apart and loses a lot of momentum for why players should continue playing. Dysterra definitely has a long way to go as a survival game. I believe it needs to be free to play at some point to lower the threshold for newer players on the fence. The developers can always patch improvements to tweak the difficulty and introduce new content, but the integral multiplayer element is really lacking in this game. For me, that's a huge negative. And it sucks that Dysterra doesn't have a lot of players, since the developers have kept players in a loop on incoming changes, addressed problems that players reported, and shared ideas they are considering to better the game. Dysterra certainly has quite the climb ahead of itself, but considering the work going into it almost every day, I would keep an eye on this one. Well, that wraps up my final thoughts on Dysterra on PC. If this game sounds like your cup of tea and you'd like to get your hands on it, check it out on Steam and give it a shot. Once you do, be sure to let us know how your experience went in the comments. Also, thanks for watching my review. If you're not already, subscribe to the channel for more content like this, hit that bell and give us a like. It goes a long way and we appreciate your support. This is Anthony with MMOBomb.com, signing off.